आता है टैंकर तीसरे रोज, तो 2 बाल्टी 1 बाल्टी पीने के लिए पानी मिलता है।
India, with its growing population, economic development, and shrinking water supplies, is under water stress that could become a crisis if not controlled.
मगर इस कमर्शियल एरिया में हमें वाटर खरीदना ही पड़ता है और कोई चारा नहीं हमारे पास। तो उसकी कॉस्ट डेफिनेटली अराउंड 2000 से लेके 4000 तक पर मंथ का खर्चा है हमारा। और जहाँ बड़ी शॉप्स हैं और भी ज़्यादा खर्चा है। कोई टैप नहीं, कोई कुछ नहीं है। इवन आप यूरिनल जाते हो, वॉशरूम जाते हो, कोई सिस्टम ही नहीं है यहाँ पे।
World Bank experts say that by 2020, it's likely that the wars will be fought over water. A trailer of that can be seen in the slums of Delhi, where people fight over water and get injured in the process only to get arrested later.
टैंकर के पास बहुत भीड़ हो जाता है। भीड़ होने के बाद पानी के लिए सीटा पर लड़ाई हुआ। लड़ाई होने के बाद पुलिस आया। पुलिस आने के बाद हमारा बेटा गवाही देने गया, तो इसको भी पकड़ के ले गया तिहाड़ जेल।
बच्चों को पाइप भी डालना होता है, पाइप से पानी निकलता है। तो कई बच्चे तो टैंकर पर चढ़ के ही डालेंगे पाइप, तो जैसे ये छोटे छोटे बच्चे चढ़ जाते हैं ऊपर, कोई नीचे गिर जाता है, किसी दूसरे का पाइप किसी के सर में लग जाता है, किसी के चोट लग जाती है। बहुत सारी ऐसी प्रॉब्लम होती है पानी की वजह से, टैंकर की वजह से। और आपस में भी झगड़े हो जाते हैं बड़े लोगों के, जैसे कि 2 पाइप डाले, मैंने डाला और मेरे बगल वाले ने डाला। मेरे पाइप में पानी नहीं आया, उसके में आ गया, तो मैं उसका छीनने की कोशिश करूँगा, या मेरे में आ गया तो मेरी छीनने की कोशिश करेगा।
The growing population puts a tremendous pressure on its water resources and per capita availability of water.
ये पानी खींचने के लिए है, पाइप उस टैंकर में डालेंगे, फिर मुंह लगा के खींचेंगे। कम से कम 50 डिब्बे भर लेते हैं।
In spite of these rivers and large coastline, there isn't enough drinking water for the people. Rapid urbanization coupled with shrinking job opportunities in the rural areas has led to urbanization of poverty. In the absence of affordable housing for urban poor, slums have flourished in all urban centers of India, and most visible impact can be seen in the metropolitan cities. 30% of Delhi's population lives in the slums. Every day, water has to be delivered to the people living in the outer parts of Delhi. Primarily migrants, this population is rarely connected to the city's piped water infrastructure, and household water is procured by struggling for the same. Municipal authorities and utility service providers are constrained by capacities and resources to tackle such challenges. The poorest of poor living in the slum clusters end up receiving extremely low levels of service for water supply, sanitation, and solid waste.
पानी लेने जा रहा था मैं, तो पानी ले रख दिया मैंने, फिर जा रहा था मैं काम पे, तो वो उनने पकड़ लिया मेरे को, बाल पकड़ लिया। फिर लड़ाई हुआ, लड़ाई छूट गया, फिर जाके थाना गया। उन लोग थाना बुलाया, थाना गया मैंने, लेकिन मेरा कंप्लेन नहीं लिया। फिर आया घर शाम को, उन लोग पता नहीं कागज़ बनाया, फिर आके शाम को गेट के पास मारने लगा।
2/3 of the city's population receives only 5% of 3,600 million litres as per official records, whereas the rich get a staggering 500 to 600 litres of water every day, which also has been subsidized by the Delhi government. There is a huge disparity between the level of service prevailing in the planned settlements and the unorganized slum clusters. This disparity and injustice lead to frustration among the poor.
सारे नेता लोग पानी भर रहे हैं यहाँ पर, यहाँ पानी 15-15 दिन में पानी नहीं आ रहा और अपनी लट्ठीबाजी जोर से पानी भर रहे हैं.
People in these slums line up waiting in anticipation of water trucks from Delhi Jal Board. It's a mad rush trying to fill water that leads to altercations between them.
Actually, the problem of water is going to be very, very big, and unfortunately, it has not taken the stage and kind of attention which it demands and deserves. Delhi is a kind of a unique situation in the sense it is a state, but also an urban agglomeration. I would say it would have severe limitations to access to water resources, and it has to depend upon interstate agreements and the implementation of those agreements to access to these water resources.
The shortage of water also creates a problem of sanitation. In a slum of about 4,000 people, there are only 6 functional toilets that not only causes inconvenience to the residents but can also lead to several ailments.
लेडीज़ लोग है जंगल जाती है, जंगल में कई बार छेड़खानी भी हुआ है. अब मजबूरी तो जाना ही पड़ेगा. हम लोग का 1-2 घर है जो जिस टाइम में ये रास्ता बन रहा था उस टाइम में हम लोग थोड़ा टैंक उनको बना के बाथरूम बना लिए, तो पूरा जो की दिक्कत है.
Many urban households do not have adequate and clean drinking water, which makes them install water purification systems. These affluent colonies do not receive water for more than 2 hours a day.
You see, if we compare water from Yamuna, which comes to North Delhi, West Delhi and other part of the city, I wonder how the people are surviving on that, because Yamuna so much polluted. Yamuna with these water treatment plants of the Delhi Jal Board or whatever are half working and half efficiency. Well, 40 years back we used to have the same water of Yamuna and it was very, very safe. But over all these years, it has come down so bad.
But the authority responsible for water supply in the capital does not believe that there is a crisis in Delhi. The senior officials of Delhi Jal Board even avoided a formal interview, but we managed to talk to a lower ranked official, even though he was not authorized to speak.
एक गाड़ी में जो कम से कम 8,000 लीटर पानी आता है, सुबह 6 बजे से और शाम के 8 बजे तक सप्लाई गाड़ी से होती है. हमारा यहाँ से सप्लाई तो मेहरौली है, महिपालपुर है, मकसूदपुर है, ये सब चारों तरफ जो हमारी सप्लाई है पूरे बसंत कुंज में. पानी 700 लीटर हम फ्री दे रहे हैं, लेकिन उसके लिए पानी फ्री है जिसका जो कनेक्शन है, और जिसका कनेक्शन पर भी अगर मीटर बिल है, मीटर लगा हुआ है तो पानी फ्री है और नहीं फ्री नहीं. तो यहाँ के देखें तो पानी सबको पूरा पड़ रहा है. पानी की समस्या का तो पूरा समाधान हो चुका है जी. पानी 700 लीटर फ्री कर दिया और इससे ज़्यादा क्या समाधान चाहिए.
Millions living in unauthorized settlements such as Sangam Vihar do not have access to water services as these colonies are illegal and there is no investment in such facilities. They still don't have access to free water supply under Delhi government's new water subsidy scheme as they do not have metered connection in their houses.
जैसे अरविंद केजरीवाल साहब जब अभी पावर में आए तो उनका वन ऑफ द मेन एजेंडा यही था कि दिल्ली वालों को पानी पीने को मिले और भरपूर मिले और बहुत सारा जैसे 700 लीटर पानी फ्री मिले हर महीने। तो मैं इसको बड़ा क्लोजली वॉच करने की कोशिश कर रहा था और मैंने ऑब्ज़र्व किया कि पानी की प्रॉब्लम्स तो अभी भी पूरी बनी हुई हैं। जैसे अभी भी पानी के टैंकर्स दिखते हैं स्लम एरियाज़ में और जो गरीब झुग्गी इलाका है वहाँ पर बड़ी बड़ी लाइनें लगती हैं। सुबह से शाम तक वो टैंकर की वेट करते हैं और कई बार तो टैंकर पहुँचता भी नहीं है वहाँ पर। मारामारी भी होती है, लड़ाई झगड़ा भी होता है और पानी की जो क्वालिटी है वो भी अच्छी नहीं है। और जहाँ तक बात पानी करने की है तो एग्जैक्टली जिस कम्युनिटी को ये सुविधाएं मिलनी चाहिए थी उन तक तो ग्रॉस रूट लेवल पे सुविधा पहुँच ही नहीं रही है, क्योंकि जिनको पानी फ्री चाहिए वो लोग तो इनके इतने गरीब हैं कि उनके पास तो पानी का मीटर ही नहीं है।
Over 1/3 of Delhi's population is poor, often living in slums or unauthorized colonies which does not have infrastructure such as underground water pipelines.
पानी तो गली में जो कनेक्शन अभी हुआ है दुनिया बिहार वाला में तो घर तक पानी पहुंच गया है, ऐसा है अभी हिसाब है, वो भी 10-15-20% में, अभी तो ज़्यादा में नहीं है। जो पहले से बिछी हुई पाइप है जो माने बोर की पानी के लिए बिछा हुआ था ना, वो पाइप है ये, उसी में जोड़ दिया गया है वो पानी को। जब सरकार की अपनी व्यवस्था आएगी ये पाइप हट जाएगी वहाँ से। सरकार अपना व्यवस्था जल्दी से कर दे, सारे सिस्टम ठीक हो जाएगा। सरकार ठीक नहीं कर रही है, पब्लिक परेशान हो रही थी, अपना काम कर लिया उसने। प्रशासन कर रहा है, विधायक कर रहा है कि भाई अभी हमारे पास अभी 6 महीना लगेगा, साल भर लगेगा, हम तंदुरुस्त काम करेंगे। उसके इस बीच में तो पब्लिक मरी जाती। छोटी सी नाली है और लोगों ने क्या किया है, नाली को भरोसा करके रोड पे पानी, घरों का पानी फेंक रहे हैं और वो सारा लोड लेता नहीं है पानी। रोड पूरा भी आप देख लोगे 1 घंटा के अंदर में यहाँ पर लोगों की क्या हाल है। लेडीज सब इतनी पानी हेल के जुटी जाती है। आप गड्ढे पे गिरते हैं, जूता गिरता है, उसी से पहन के जाते हैं। कितने आदमी चप्पल हाथ में लेके चलते हैं कि जूता बाहर पहन लेंगे, बच्चे को एक चप्पल पहना के भेजते हैं कि जूता स्कूल में पहनवाएंगे। मत पूछे कितनी परेशानी, बीमारी का छोड़ो। यहाँ तो सब नेता लोग समझते हैं संगम बिहार में कीड़े मकोड़े रह रहे हैं। हाँ, जो फ्री में सब कुछ बांटेंगे हमको वोट दे देगा।
Delhi's poor are hardest hit by the city's inadequate water supply. The growing social inequalities and demand for resources ultimately puts pressure on the water resources such as Yamuna.
So right now about 800 million gallons of water is being taken from the canal systems which are for which Punjab, Himachal, UP and Haryana. These are the states in which Delhi has to negotiate time to time. And only 80 mgd of water is taken from groundwater. But the point is that we cannot have augmentation of these resources through construction of new dams. That is not possible. Groundwater, again, we are at a threshold level. In fact, the groundwater table of Delhi is declining. So in a way, we are in a situation wherein access to new resources of water is going to be very limited. And with the growing population and the growing demand, this is going to have a huge insecurity and sustainability question for Delhi.
Yamuna's 22-kilometer stretch in Delhi is barely 2% of the length of the river, but contributes to 80% of pollution load. Sewage, industrial pollutants and garbage reach the Yamuna every day, a water body responsible for 60% of Delhi's water supply. A large number of drains are directly flowing into the river, once considered holy by its own people.
Water quality in rivers, specifically with respect to river ecosystem, then again certain industrial discharges like heavy metals, mercury and excess amount of acids from industries is again a burden, because the conventional sewage treatment plants do not address to these type of pollutions. So the sewage treatment plants of the urban local bodies only address up to the organic matter and to certain extent pathogens which are there in the water. But when the industrial wastewater mixes with the sewage and goes to the sewage treatment plant, they remain untreated and enters into the river system.
Yamuna Action Plan 1 started in 1993 and we are almost 20 years, 2 decades away from when it started. We haven't seen much of a difference in the river. There's more than 20,000 crores that's been spent on the river, but the river is as black as it was, or perhaps it's more dead than what it was in 93. So in a way it talks about lack of political will, no government action, and that's the reason why, despite announcing and actually spending that taxpayers' money, there's nothing that has actually happened to the river. A lot of our work is to bring Yamuna back to the mind map of the populace. So we work with young people in schools and colleges, talking about the relevance of a river, the significance of citizenship, and why do we need to save a river? Why is it important for young people to really think about environment, not just for academic purposes, but for real change that we all need in our environment.
Delhi is not the only city facing a water problem. Other metropolitans such as Bangalore have their own water issues. Home to more than 10 million people and rapidly adding migrants coming to the city for job opportunities, the city's authorities are struggling to cope up with increasing demands of water and other natural resources. Bangalore's population has doubled since 2001, and mindless planning of infrastructure has led to depletion and contamination of city water. According to a survey conducted in 13 slums, more than 90% of residents do not have piped drinking water supply and are forced to depend on public taps and bore wells to meet their water needs.
बोर का पानी ये 4 दिन में एक बार छोड़ती है, बराबर ठीक नहीं है, कीड़े पड़ जाती हैं। अब हमें दूर दूर से बाटल का पानी ले लगा को पीती हैं, और ये पानी पिए तो बीमार, खांसी, सर्दी, ये पानी गलीज पानी ऐसा, बारिश पड़े तो अब भी गलीज आता पानी। पैसा खर्च होता है और कासा नहीं रहे तो कान से तब पकड़ लगाती, बाटला में छोटे बाटला ले लग जाते। अब हमें मेहनत कर को बत्तियां लगड़ को एक बाटल 30 रुपए, 100 रुपए से एडवांस देना।
गरीब पानी आता, पानी पाक आता नहीं, 3 बजे ने 2 बजे उठना पानी के बाद गरीब पानी वो दिन पकड़ते भी नहीं हमें पानी।
Majority of the areas received water once in 5 days. The report also mentions that 8 of these slums had contaminated water. Bangalore has 562 slum areas, including 300 undeclared slums, which have not been provided water by its authorities.
गंदा पानी, कीड़े सब आते हैं जी, और BWS और को भी कंप्लेंट करें जी। कुछ कार्रवाई हुई? नहीं, कुछ भी नहीं। वो कारपोरेशन की गाड़ी ला के पार्क करते हैं सैनिटरी का जी, 2 दिन पार्क आता, फिर मामूली।
The water does not go to the individual houses in the EWS colonies with more than 1500 houses. Rather, it goes to the public tanks located in the slums. The water in these tanks is not fit for drinking, which leads to children falling ill. The Bangalore Water Supply Board has failed to provide water to the slum dwellers both in terms of availability and quality. According to the Civic Bangalore report, the water supply at odd hours has robbed the sleep of residents and affected the studies of children.
Not having a piped water connection at home or 24/7 water supply, they are losing in terms of earnings, they are losing in terms of school education, they are losing in terms of healthcare. So there are multiple losses because of the lack of piped water supply. Because many of the slums don't have underground sewerage, a lot of them are also doing open defecation, there are no toilets, so all that sewage water is also getting into the lakes and the drains, and because of that groundwater is getting polluted. So it is a vicious cycle, and so the groundwater that they are pumping out is unfit for consumption very often, and BWSSB is supposed to test that water before it is consumed. We have proposed a solution is that instead of giving water for 2 hours in the middle of the night or something, let there be common sumps created on the periphery of the slum, or if there is space within the slum, create a common sump, a common pump and a common overhead tank, and give individual connection to every slum household from that overhead tank, and so that like anybody else in the affluent area, they don't have to get up in the middle of the night. The water will get pumped when they are sleeping also, and they can get water at the turn of a tap. So we want a common supply system to be initiated for the slum areas.
Bangalore's primary sources of fresh water is the Kaveri River, its 600 lakes and groundwater resources. However, the local authorities say that Bangalore has only 189 live lakes.
You see, this Kaveri water supply scheme came in 1974. Okay. Before that, Bengaluru was getting water supply from 2-3 tanks. Okay. With Tippevandanalli and 2-3 other tanks. Okay. But after Kaveri supply came, the BWSSB, the government have completely forgotten and neglected these lakes. Okay. So nobody is bothered about lakes, and that number has gone down and down and down. Okay. There may be hardly about 100 or 120 lakes remaining. Okay. So when people see water, they think it's a live lake. Okay. Actually, it's storing sewage lake. They're all sewage tanks. Okay. So there is no freshwater lake in Bangalore. Okay. Okay. So the point is, we have totally neglected these lakes. Okay. And Kaveri water supply cannot give water to the whole city even as it is now. Okay. When these tanks, that is when the lakes have been storing the sewage water, it is not simply standing there, it is keeping on percolating down. And when these borewells are pumping out the groundwater, there is that vacuum. That vacuum is filled up by the sewage water which is percolating down to the borewells. So whatever these borewell people are supplying through tankers are contaminated water. The only answer is one, these lakes will have to be revived, and number two, the leakage. About 40% of the water pumped from Kaveri is leaking under the ground. So that will have to be stopped. That will have to be reduced. They cannot stop it 100%. But there are cities like Phnom Penh, which is in Cambodia, which is again a developing country, not a developed country, where it's only 6% is the what is called the leakage. They call non-revenue water, NRW. That is only 6% there, whereas it is 40% in Bangalore. So this should be reduced to around 10%. So you save at least 30% of that water. But the most important thing is, even in a place like Singapore, for instance, they have been recycling or recovering this sewage water. So there is a psychological inhibition that sewage water people will not drink and all that. But once it is treated completely and recovered, Singapore, for instance, uses about 30% of its water supply comes from its own sewages. The water that we consume, 80% of that goes into sewage. So that's a waste. So that will have to be recovered. A good portion of that will have to be recycled.
The rest have been carelessly encroached upon or have severe contamination by sewage water and garbage. Deteriorating quality of water causes several diseases, some of which are life-threatening. Children are the most vulnerable group to waterborne diseases such as dengue and malaria, as they are undernourished and have underdeveloped immune systems. Delhi has seen the rise of a parallel water industry. The private water suppliers who have filled a large gap between demand and supply. The private tank water is unfit for drinking, but remains the only option for some people who are unable to snatch their way through pipes and trucks.
क्योंकि झुग्गी में ज़्यादा ही दिक्कत नहीं, तो रोज़ का पहले 2 टैंकर आते थे पानी, अभी रोज़ का एक भी नहीं आ रहे हैं. अभी वो भी एक बंद कर दिए हैं. मुश्किल से 3 दिन में 1 दिन टैंकर भेज रहे हैं जल बोर्ड से. तो हमारे प्राइवेट के ही पानी यूज होते हैं.
Experts suggest that long-term solutions to water problems are decentralized wastewater treatment and rainwater harvesting, backed by complementing policy initiatives by the government that allow and encourage such actions by the people.
The problem with Delhi is not only with respect to subsidy, I would say it is something more. And what lies more is that people find supply of government through Delhi Jal Board as unreliable. And because of the unreliability in quality of water, people actually have adopted coping strategies. And what we have estimated that the coping strategies like use of domestic water purifiers, their own booster pumps, the coping strategy has costed the people of Delhi around 3 billion rupees in a year, whereas the entire operation and maintenance cost of Delhi Jal Board is hardly 1.6 billion rupees.
Recycled sewage can be used for non-potable purposes, reducing the demand of fresh water. Proper treatment and disposal of sewage is also essential to ensure safety of water supplies.
मैं सोनिया विहार रहता हूँ, वहाँ पे पानी की कोई दिक्कत नहीं, क्योंकि वहाँ पे जो प्लांट लगा हुआ उससे हम लोगों को पानी की बिल्कुल किल्लत नहीं। कुछ एरिया हैं जो थोड़ा दूर हैं, उनके लिए दिक्कत है, जहाँ पे अभी पाइपलाइन नहीं डली है ना, मतलब काफ़ी दिक्कतें वहाँ पे आती। जरा हमारे से कोई 4 किलोमीटर दूर पे 5 किलोमीटर, काफ़ी पीने के लिए भी ठीक है, नहाना खाना कपड़ा धोना सब साफ़ सुथरा, बिल्कुल कपड़े भी अच्छे साफ़ होते हैं और काफ़ी मतलब अच्छा पानी बिल्कुल ठीक है, कभी कोई दिक्कत नहीं आई। तो यहाँ का जो पानी है पूरी दिल्ली में हमारे हिसाब से सप्लाई पूरी दिल्ली में है। बसंत कुंज है, संगम विहार है, बुढ़ाड़ी है, मतलब कोई हर जगह इसका पानी जाता है। लेकिन अब यहाँ से जाते जाते मतलब जब काफ़ी दूर जाने के बाद फिर लोगों में दिक्कतें आती हैं, क्योंकि इसलिए आती हैं कि यहाँ जैसे यहाँ से जाते जाते हर जगह बढ़ जाता पानी, तो वहाँ पहुँचते पहुँचते तो काफ़ी लेवल तक नीचे हो जाता पानी, इसलिए लोगों को दिक्कतें संगम विहार और जगह काफ़ी दिक्कतें आती हैं।
Many commercial establishments are using water-friendly techniques in their premises, such as the Trident Hotel in Gurgaon. They recycle wastewater to use it for several other purposes.
हमारे होटल के स्वेज ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट के अलावा हमारे पास 2 रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग पिट्स भी हैं। होटल के अंदर जो भी बारिश का पानी होता है वो एक जगह पे इकट्ठा होता है, उसके 2 टैंक्स हैं हमारे पास। जो भी एक्सेस पानी होता है, जब बारिश बहुत ज़्यादा हो जाती है, जो भी एक्सेस पानी होता है वो गवर्नमेंट का जो रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग पिट है होटल के बाहर, वो वहाँ निकल जाता है।
Metros like Delhi and Bangalore need a strong and reliable infrastructures backed by strong political will. Experts suggest that recycling and reusing the water could add 40 million gallons per day to the available water supply. Theft and illegal connections need to be stopped. All constructions need to be regularized, keeping water availability in mind. Water pipelines are at the top of the water distribution network. When water is pumped at high pressure through the pipes, they either tend to burst or leak. These leaks need to be repaired and water meters need to be installed at the source. Delhi and other metropolitan cities need to look inwards. It needs to create enough infrastructure and also look into how the growing demand is managed. Once the people are made stakeholders in water conservation, we may look at a less thirsty Delhi.